The ship docks in Victoria, British Columbia at 11 at night. The shops on Government Street have been closed for hours. Most passengers are already in bed, or up at the buffet for one last plate, or staring out at a row of harbor lights, wondering if they're supposed to get off. By 1 in the morning, the ship is gone. This is the Alaska cruise, Seattle to Juneau to Skagway to Ketchikan, with one half-asleep stop in a Canadian provincial capital where almost nothing is open and almost no one disembarks. Most passengers assume Victoria is on the itinerary because Victoria is pretty. It is. That isn't the reason. The Victoria stop is a legal performance. It is the visible piece of a structure most passengers will sail through their entire lives without noticing. A structure that by the time we're done with it will explain why a company headquartered in Miami pays almost nothing in U.S. federal income tax on a business that takes Americans out of American ports for an American vacation and brings them back to the same American ports a week later. The cruise itinerary itself is showing you the architecture. You just read it as a port visit. To understand why a ship full of Americans heading to Alaska needs to detour into Canada at midnight, you have to look at what the ship actually is on paper. And what the ship is on paper is foreign. Walk to the stern of almost any major cruise ship sailing from a U.S. port and look up at the flag. It's not the one you think it is. The industry calls this flying a flag of convenience, meaning the company picked which country's rulebook the ship plays under, the way you might pick which state to register an LLC in based on which one charges the lowest fee. The captain is often American. The crew is paid in dollars, and the ship is, on paper, Bahamian, or Bermudian, or Panamanian, which produces an immediate problem for an Alaska cruise. There is a U.S. statute called the Passenger Vessel Services Act, signed in 1886 when the steamship industry was lobbying Congress to keep foreign ships out of domestic passenger routes. The law is still on the books. It says a foreign-flagged vessel cannot carry passengers between U.S. ports without a meaningful foreign stop along the way. Lawyers call this cabotage, a fancy word for a simple idea. Don't let foreign ships do domestic business. A cruise from Seattle to Alaska is, by any normal definition, a domestic trip. Both ports are American. The passengers are mostly American, but the ship is Bahamian, which is why Victoria exists on the itinerary, not as a destination, as a compliance event. The ship has to legally touch foreign soil at some point during the voyage, and Victoria is the closest piece of foreign soil to the Seattle-Alaska corridor, 3 hours after dark. The flag at the back of the ship is not decoration. It's the one piece of the corporate structure the passenger can actually see. The moment you start asking why the ship is foreign, the rest of the architecture comes into focus. Walk into the lobby of an office tower in downtown Miami. The sign at the front says Carnival Corporation. The executives ride the elevators. The marketing campaigns are shot there. The earnings calls are run from there. The company you have almost certainly given money to at some point in your life for a Carnival cruise, a Princess cruise, a Holland America cruise is run from that building. Everything you can see and touch about this company is American. The company is not American. Carnival Corporation, the corporate parent of 9 cruise brands, the company whose ships sail out of Miami and Long Beach and Seattle, the company you have almost certainly given money to at some point in your life, is incorporated in the Republic of Panama. Royal Caribbean Group, headquartered a few miles up the same Miami highway, is incorporated in Liberia. Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings, also Miami-based, is incorporated in Bermuda. 3 companies, 3 foreign charters, 1 American skyline, 1 American IRS which collects almost nothing. The mechanism that makes this work is a clause in the U.S. tax code called Section 883. The name sounds like a parking citation. The function is more interesting. Section 883 tells the IRS to keep its hands off the income a foreign shipping company earns from international voyages, as long as the country that company is incorporated in does the same favor for American shippers in return. It's a diplomatic handshake written into the tax code. You don't tax our ships, we don't tax yours. Everybody waves and sails on. The original logic was built for cargo. International shipping is, by its nature, slippery. A container ship loads in Hamburg, unloads in Houston, picks up in Veracruz. The world's major shipping nations decided long ago to leave each other's vessels alone. That logic applies with equal force to passengers, which means the cruise industry sits in the same legal category as the foreign tanker fleet hauling crude across the Atlantic. The same exemption that lets a Greek shipping company avoid U.S. corporate income tax on container traffic lets Carnival avoid it on a margarita served on a pool deck off Cozumel. And it isn't just the ticket. Section 883 covers income from the international operation of the ship, and that means substantially everything the voyage generates: the fare, the drink package, the casino, the spa, the shore excursion, the $10 photograph in the leather sleeve. If it happens on the international voyage, it sits inside the same exempt envelope as the ticket, which is why the onboard upselling is so aggressive. Onboard isn't the one piece the IRS can reach. Onboard sits inside the same protected category. The aggression is happening because onboard is the highest margin slice of the business, riding on the same foreign flag status that protects the fare. The structure lets the company monetize the passenger without the tax friction a Las Vegas resort has to live with. Now, look at the map again: the Seattle to Alaska itinerary with the Victoria stop, the Miami headquarters with the Panamanian charter. These are not two facts. The single decision to register the ship under a foreign flag forces the detour into Victoria and unlocks the Section 883 exemption that erases the federal tax bill. One law makes you see the foreign flag, the other makes sure you don't notice it. Which raises the obvious question: has anyone ever tried to do anything about it? Yes, periodically. Senator Jay Rockefeller of West Virginia introduced bills in 2013 aimed at repealing the cruise industry's Section 883 exemption. They went nowhere. In 2017, the Senate Finance Committee's version of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act actually included a partial repeal until Senator Dan Sullivan of Alaska, whose state runs on cruise tourism, got the provisions stripped on the Senate floor. And in early 2025, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick went on Fox News and said the quiet part out loud: every cruise ship flies Liberia or Panama, none of them pays taxes, and that was going to end. Nothing has ended. The reason is the most important sentence in this entire architecture. The cruise industry's defense is technically true. They are, in the eyes of U.S. tax law, in the same category as foreign container shipping. To rewrite Section 883 for cruise lines, Congress would have to either single them out or unwind a piece of international tax reciprocity that's been working quietly for almost a century. Neither path is appealing. The category does the protecting. But the industry has been moving anyway. In December, Carnival announced it would shift its legal incorporation from Panama to Bermuda. Shareholders approved this past April. The change takes effect in early May. The interesting word there is Bermuda, not Delaware, not Florida, not anywhere in the United States. The company read the same Lutnick interview you did, and it didn't move home. It moved sideways to another foreign jurisdiction whose statutory exemption is regarded as more durable than Panama's. The architecture isn't being unwound, it's being upgraded. Which echoes the moment in 2020 when the contradiction surfaced in public. When the pandemic shut down the industry, the cruise lines were operating from Miami, employing Americans on shore, calling Americans senators. By every visible measure, they looked like American companies in trouble. They were not, on paper, American. When the CARES Act got drafted, the major U.S.-listed cruise companies ran into a structural problem. They were Panamanian and Liberian and Bermudian. Direct relief in the form available to U.S. corporations never quite arrived for them. The companies kept the structure, which tells you which side of that trade is the valuable one. So the next time you're on a Seattle departure cruise and the ship pulls into Victoria at 11 at night, lights low, gangway mostly empty, half the shops on Government Street already closed, you're not going to read it the way you used to. You're going to look up at the flag at the stern, which is almost certainly not American. You're going to notice that almost nobody is using the gangway, and you're going to realize you're watching a piece of the US tax code being performed in real time on schedule every voyage. The real trick was never that they hid it. They put it on the itinerary in writing and called it a port stop. It is not a port stop. It is a statute performed nightly. That's another one for the cruise files. If you want to learn more about what goes on behind the giant cruise ships, everything from the scams on board to the secrets below deck, subscribe, like, and share. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.